What's going on, guys? Hope you're all doing well. Now for today's video, I wanted to talk about an abandoned movie from the beginning of Godzilla's Showa series. Way back in 1962, King Kong vs. Godzilla was released as some massive success for the monster, with it being by far the most profitable Godzilla movie ever made. But a huge rumor would soon circulate in both the East and the West in regards to that film's ending, with English-speaking people believing that Kong won in their version of the film, but over in Japan, the victory went to Godzilla. This urban legend of an ending would last for decades before people were clued in on the reality of the situation. King Kong not only won the fight in that movie, but originally, its sequel would have revealed that he not only defeated Godzilla, he actually killed him. So back in the early 1960s, a sequel for King Kong vs. Godzilla was gearing up to be made immediately. And while I know that there may be a lot of you out there that even recently thought the whole Godzilla victory in Japan myth was true, the reality is that over in Japan, Toho was developing a sequel all about what happened to Godzilla's body and how the corpse of the dead monster would be used in the script. Continuation, King Kong vs. Godzilla, is an unmade movie that was going to follow up immediately where the 1962 film left off. What's even more interesting is the actual plot of the film. Had it been made, it would have changed the Godzilla franchise forever in a pretty big way. Like I said earlier, some people actually thought at the time that the Japanese ending of King Kong vs. Godzilla ended with Godzilla being the victor, but the early draft of this sequel reveals that King Kong did kill him. He killed him underneath the water at the end of the 1962 film. We aren't given much detail into how this happened, but it did, and the film's characters would actually have stumbled upon the remains of Godzilla off the coast of Atami. Apparently, a diver found the dead monster in a sandbank preserved via the super low temperatures of the waters, and even though he's not breathing, for some reason veterinarians still tranquilize him before he's shipped somewhere else. I guess that's always a pretty good idea whenever you're dealing with Godzilla. Now, the method in which King Kong killed Godzilla has always baffled me, because the movie gets even more crazy as it goes on, but we're never told exactly how Kong did it. And I know what you're thinking if you're a normal monster movie fan. You're probably like, how? And I mean, really, like, how do they expect anyone to believe that King Kong can even think of killing Godzilla? He was the underdog of the last movie, by the way, so it's even a stretch for this universe. Let alone, how could King Kong kill him underwater in his element? Well, my best guess is that at the time of this movie's construction, look guys, we have to remember that there had only been two other Godzilla movies made before. The first in which the original Godzilla did die, and the second where the new Godzilla killed Anguirus. So the concept of this species or other monsters being able to be killed, even like Rodan at the end of that movie, that wasn't really that difficult to believe. But now, after 60 years of additional movies, a lot of Godzilla fans will probably be super surprised, especially because this movie was being made by Toho in Japan. It wasn't like Roland Emmerich in 1998. This is in the 60s. So the general plot is that Godzilla's dead body is going to be used as a tourist attraction for an amusement park, much like how Kong was supposed to be used to boost ratings in the last film. King Kong, by the way, has been taking care of a young child, the survivor of a plane crash who Kong is very fiercely protecting. There's a lot of plot dedicated to how people try to rescue the kid away from King Kong, and he even goes to Africa around some ancient ruins, which probably would have been really cool, and fights a giant scorpion. All of that stuff sounds kind of fun, but it is very reminiscent of the last film, only instead of Faroe Island and an octopus, it's Africa and a scorpion. Godzilla, meanwhile, is still dead, by the way. He's like, seriously, he died. I'm not making that up. But the plan is for the JSDF to revive him with electricity. They actually are only able to do this once the electricity goes through King Kong, if you remember, he was very electrical in the last film, and then into Godzilla, where the two of them finally have their long-awaited rematch. The whole thing was supposed to end with the battle around Mount Azo, which was the place where Rodan ended. And the idea to actually use Godzilla's corpse as a tourist attraction was going to be originally used in Mothra vs. Godzilla, believe it or not, with the idea of Rodan's dead location being a little wink that Jean LeMay calls in his big book of Japanese giant monster movies, The Lost Films. This could have been a possible setup for another abandoned movie, Godzilla vs. Rodan, which ultimately we did get to see them fight in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. The real story with this movie, though, though, is that it would have revealed that Godzilla was killed by King Kong, which again, I'm sure is kind of wild to even comprehend. I know it is for me. Of course, he was revived in the plot, and it even focused more on his electrical powers that made their way over from King Kong and into other movies of Godzilla, like Obira, Horror of the Deep, and Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. But this movie was going to change the trajectory of the monster in a pretty big way. Nowadays, you mostly hear Toho purists say things like, only the oxygen destroyer can kill Godzilla. But early on, this was most certainly not the case. And believe it or not, even though they never made this movie, the plot for Mothra vs. Godzilla originally carried on with this idea. And it too started off with the dead body of Godzilla. You know, he died after his battle with King Kong. This was something that was serious. And the Enterprise company from Mothra vs. Godzilla was going to use his body as a tourist attraction after it was found washed ashore. So again, big shout out to John LeMay's The Lost Films book for this info. You can find a lot of this stuff already online, but I really do recommend it for mega fans like myself. It's got a lot of cool trivia. Ultimately, guys, Toho did not wind up making this movie. They totally had the rights to do it after acquiring Kong from RKO, but for some reason they decided to make King Kong Escapes and Mothra vs. Godzilla instead. I have no idea why they didn't want to follow up on the rematch, but most people speculate that it would have been due to how much of a rehash this movie would have been compared to the first. Only this time Godzilla being in the role of Kong and vice versa. There's no clear winner at the end from my understanding, but both of them are kind of consumed by some sort of volcanic eruption. The final battle would have been in this huge environment with lava and magma flowing everywhere, even endangering the kid that Kong was looking after. Personally, this just seems like a great idea for a sequel to me, and we've seen stuff like, you know, Terror of Mechagodzilla follow after versus Mechagodzilla, and versus Megalon after versus Gigan. I kind of would have liked to have seen King Kong versus Godzilla 2, or continuation, whatever you want to call this movie, because visually it sounds really cool. Who doesn't want to see Kong or Godzilla around a volcanic environment fighting? And also the idea that Godzilla, it's so crazy to think about, but yeah, early on, Godzilla could be killed, guys, and he was going to get killed by King Kong, so very fun idea for a movie. The giant scorpion, by the way, would have been great to see some stop motion by Ray Harryhausen or something. Very much so doubt he would have even wanted to be a part of this. But anyways, the original winner of 1962's King Kong vs. Godzilla would not only have been the big mad monster from the West, he was supposed to have killed Godzilla, and they even entertained the idea of having future sequels start with that concept of Godzilla's corpse being used as a tourist attraction. Now, of course, Godzilla was still planned to be revived, you know, that's part of the plot, but I find this whole area of the early Showa era fascinating. Not only does it reveal a much different way to look at the character of Godzilla, but it also has some stuff that inevitably bled into newer movies. Even Godzilla vs. Kong seems to have picked up on King Kong being someone's protector from this older unmade movie. But hey guys, those are all just my own thoughts and opinions on the subject matter. It was never made, but continuation, King Kong vs. Godzilla from 1963 would have been one seriously interesting sequel, revealing that Kong killed Godzilla. Never happened, but there's a lot of stuff that I think people could really talk about and speculate over, especially with the new film Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire coming out soon. But yeah, those are all just my own thoughts. I'd love to hear what all of you guys have to say. Would you have liked to have seen this movie, and how do you think the fight would have gone down? Whatever your own thoughts and opinions happen to be, I'd love to hear all about them, guys, in the comments down below. Let me tell you something, brother. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it, and if you'd like to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you can be updated when I put out new videos. God bless you all. Christ is King. I hope you all enjoyed your time, and as always, take it easy.